Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll call the meeting to order with the first portion of our meeting being recognitions, and actually we have good news of donations and grants, so I'll turn it over to Tim.
Okay, yeah, I've got the first one. I don't know if you can hear me. Oh, I don't have sound. So the first one is River Valleys Trails. We've been working with River Valleys for a while here through the Safe Routes to Schools, and in conjunction with that, River Valleys has donated $6,500 to the district, and that $6,500 would be used to put in bike racks. There we go, bike racks at some of our elementary schools. So Marion and Jim Weber are here on behalf of River Valley Trails, and I don't know if you want to come up to the microphone and say a few words.
Hi, I'm Marion Weber. I'm president of River Valley Trails. We've been around since as a nonprofit since about 2003, and we like to partner with other people, other organizations, and to do things like create trails, promote trails, and advocate for trails, safe trails for bicycles, pedestrians, and accessible trails. We also do education, safety education booths at a lot of the local events. We've worked with River Falls, we've worked with Osceola, we've worked with Hudson, and we're currently working with the school district as far as putting in bike parking and bike repair stations. And the $6,500 was for bike parking. And in the process of the conversation, our original agreement with River Valley Trails was to have that include bike repair facilities. So our goal this year is at a amount something slightly under $7,000 that we would be providing bike repair stations at the high school, the junior high, and elementary schools as the school district chooses. So we're absolutely delighted to be able to work with the school to do these things, and look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, folks. Appreciate your donation. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up we have the Donaldson Foundation grant.
Right. This afternoon, Nick and I had the pleasure of participating in a surprise presentation of a grant award from the Donaldson Foundation to Tom Klatt, high school technology education instructor. The grant award was for $10,000, which Tom plans to use to purchase welding equipment and stations specifically. Donaldson is an international manufacturing company with a local presence in Baldwin, Wisconsin. Donaldson hires many of its welders from WITC, and many of our high school students interested in welding go to WITC. So the support from Donaldson will strengthen the skills of our students and their future employees. We want to give a huge thank you to the Donaldson Foundation.
All right, excellent. Very good. Now, moving on with our agenda, we do have a time for citizens' requests to speak, and we have one request. It is about actually an item that we're going to take action on later in the meeting, but for consideration regarding the time and so forth. And we have Terry Frawley, who would like to speak regarding the transfer of, I guess, property he owns from the Somerset School District to Hudson.
It's
Is that
actually
correct?
property in a trust, but
Okay.
my name is Terry Frawley, and I'm here to determine if we can switch our property from Somerset School District to the Hudson School District. Our land is on V, just off of V. The borders over there are fluid at best. The Frawleys have a long history in St. Croix County. That farm has been in the family for 165 years. My grandfather was a town chairman of St. Joseph for 50 years. He was in the first car that went across the lift bridge when it was built. My father's generation actually went to high school in Stillwater. So we've been bounced around. Interestingly, my grandmother would drive them to high school in Stillwater, and they'd have to get their own way home. And more than once, he rode home in the back of a manure wagon. Our land was put into the Forest Service Program 25 years ago. This was to reduce tax, let it go back to nature. It really has not had a significant financial impact on the Somerset School District. It is currently in the Wisconsin Forest Program. The property has been in a trust since my parents' passing. The survivors are all in their 60s and 70s. We're considering develop, and it appears the property could support 25 to 30 higher-end homes. I live in Wayzata. We picked Wayzata because the school district there was the best one around. When we looked at developing this property, we started to research school districts, and we found that the Hudson district was significantly better rated than the Somerset School District. Additional problems with the Somerset area is that their downtown is governed by bars and strip joints, and we don't feel that's conducive. We looked at the U.S. News and World Report in 2019, 23,500 schools. Hudson School District is in the top 4%. Somerset School District is in the top 23. I have arranged to have a handout given out, and you'll see that while those numbers appear close, there's a dramatic difference in where they fall in the grade. Some things we had to discover was the Hudson School District already services the properties in the north, or in the area of our farm. Your buses are already going by. We abut properties in the Hudson School District on the north and the east side. The south side is County Road V. We're approximately equal distance from both schools. We believe larger schools offer more communities for children, and I've certainly seen that in the Wayzata School District, where there's so many kids, they can all find their own place. Somerset is not dependent on the revenue generated by our property because it's been in different types of programs. Any questions?
Actually, because you're speaking at this time, we wouldn't be able to do questions, but I don't know if do you want to diverge from there? Otherwise,
Yeah, I mean, I think, the board will be taking action on this a little bit later in the meeting. I would just say typically it's been our practice that, we would always welcome additional land into the district. Rarely would we ever say it would be advantageous for us to not allow it in. So I don't believe your hurdle is going to be at this meeting. I believe the hurdle will probably be with the Somerset School District. And
We
again,
have to start here, though, unfortunately.
yes, yep, starting here. So, yeah, I mean, I will tell you that it's no secret that coming up later on the agenda, the administration's recommendation would be to allow the annexation of the property. The board will be taking action later in the meeting.
So
You cut me free?
yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments. All right. Moving on then to reports, actually superintendent's report.
You'll have to bear with me. I have a little bit of a cough. So just wanted to touch on, we had the WASB convention, WASB convention, which is the Wisconsin Association of School Boards convention, just about 2 weeks ago, I think is what it was. And we had 5 out of the 7 board members attend, and it was a great attendance. There were a lot of great learning sessions, opportunities to learn from other school districts, other boards, and some of the keynotes. I don't know if anybody had any comments or things they wanted to comment about WASB. I just wanted to make sure that we did touch on that at least a little bit.
Anybody have a session or particularly stood out? I know there was a couple of good ones right towards the end that I went to. The last one was how to deal with negative people and how to avoid becoming one, which thankfully we have none in our school district. So I thought it was just useful for everyday life. But Heather, do you have any?
Yeah, I guess I think the usefulness of being there is, yes, in those keynotes, and I thought the keynote spoke to the themes that we've been discussing as a board and as administration, which really is that whole idea of our reality is changing. The workforce of the future is going to be very different from the workforce of today. And what does that mean for how we support our kids during their pre-K-12 experience? I think the benefit of those breakout sessions really is the opportunity to hear from other districts about what they're trying, and not that what they're doing is golden for us, but that opportunity for us to learn and talk with and hear from other districts, I think is really a benefit of that conference. But again, just that reinforcing theme that I think we're doing the right work as our team, our administrative team is talking with us about what does it look like for us to be thinking about today's kids and what work and civic life is going to look like in 20 years. So I really appreciate, I think it's a really valuable experience and appreciate the opportunity to be there.
Great.
Yeah, I would say that was my sixth one that I've been to out of 7 years, and every time I come away feeling that we are blessed here in Hudson, that we don't necessarily have some of the same issues that other districts struggle with, but yet, even though they're in different locations in the state, we still have stuff that we might be able to do. But many times, I'm halfway through the session and figure out we already do this stuff, so sometimes we're ahead of the curve. But it is still a good experience to mingle with districts from around the state.
I also found it very important that they wouldn't let Bob into the session how to hire your next superintendent. So I thought that was great, even though he was pounding on the door. So
They were tricky in how they titled it.
Yes.
So I was confused.
Yes. But no, it was a great event, and I'm glad that it continues to be a crucial part of our board development as we operate as a district. The next update that I have is the facility committee update. So just want to touch on, we did meet, Tim and I met with members of Wold Architectural Group. We've been, a little over a week ago, Tim? Right about a week ago. And to start the process, so they have their facility analysis piece, which I believe they've already started, which is walking the facilities with our maintenance department and analyzing all the different components of the buildings. But they did start to kind of put together a schedule for us, tentative, which is an extremely aggressive schedule, and just want to make sure everybody is okay with that. It would start as early with a facility advisory committee, similar to kind of what we're doing with the school start time committee, except a little bit more condensed schedule, where the schedule would start. The first meeting would be March 16th at Rivercrest Elementary. It seems to be a good place to kind of kick things off because we have that large room to be able to do those things, and also kind of sets the backdrop for one of our newest elementaries. And then each meeting would be at a different building in the district. And so to be able to give the facility advisory committee an opportunity to see the different buildings in the district, with the exception of the high school, would not probably be included in that. And then 2 weeks later, we would do, March 31st, we'd have another facility committee meeting, followed up then by a week later, April 7th, and then 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks. And then also there'd be working with a survey company to get feedback from the community, and also the architects coming in and talking with the board to kind of give them an update as to what's going on. One of the things that we did talk about was the makeup of committee. We felt it was important to have community members, parents, teachers, representation from activities, from athletics, student representation, and probably looking at a group somewhere between 25 to 40 people, maybe right around that range. You get much bigger than that, it starts to get a little bit difficult. So I think, again, if the board's saying, yeah, we think, we're all right with moving forward on this timeline in order to get to at least a recommendation. The goal would be to get to a recommendation to the board, no later than the end of May. So to be able to say, hey, here's the state of facilities, here's what the community thinks, and, we've done some surveys and things along those lines. So that you guys would have that. The questions, I guess.
So with that time frame and the first meeting not being until March 16th, remind me again, spring break is the week following that?
Yeah, so the 16th, we would have me on Monday the 16th, and then the week after that would be spring break. Then we'd come back the week after spring break, have another meeting. There'd kind of be, in the beginning, is what the architects had kind of talked to us about is, it's important to spend some of the time on the education side of things as to, expectations and 21st century, your next generation learning. But they don't really need a tremendous amount of time in between the meetings, with different options. It's more how quickly can people digest the information between meetings.
One of the things that's being done in those 5 weeks is a facilities assessment then? They're not just going off what Kraus did?
Yep. So part of the proposal that was put to the board back in January, drawing a blank.
December.
The December work session included a facility analysis also to complement what Kraus Anderson had done several years back. And so that's happening right now. So the goal is that information is ready for the committee when they start heading down that path, so they have that information to use. There'll be some tours involved, and basically they're kind of two-hour night meetings. Commitment 6:30 to 8:30 is kind of what we were targeting. Wanted to give people enough time to be able to get home from work, but yet not have it go so late into the evening. People are really starting to get tired. So,
any questions or comments about either the schedule or committee makeup? Yes. So.
Mr. President, Dr. Olet, so when Wold does the walkabouts, does Jim Stayskull accompany them, or do they walk with principals, or who's with them when
you're
they
talking
do that?
currently?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
currently, when they've been,
Yep. So the facility analysis, Jim's with them as they do the walk. It's the last one, they had 5 engineers and Jim walking the buildings. And then in addition to that, then Vaughn, who was the gentleman that came and presented, is setting up individual meetings with principals to get their feedback on things as well. And then in addition to that, then obviously the feedback we get from the facility committee, and then also kind of getting some direction from the facility committee as to what their thoughts are on a whole slew of things.
Right. Anything else?
Mr. President? No, I'm excited that we're able to move quickly, and just want to acknowledge that I know that even though you're splitting the work up among you, facilitating 2 community engagement processes simultaneously is a lot to take on. I'm thinking about all of the communications work and the logistics, so trust that you guys feel like you can do it, and thank you for the above and beyond, because those are both really big processes, so to do them both at once is a lot.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Both of these are pretty heavily logistical kind of projects as we coordinate those. And Aaron and Dave and Tracy have done a nice job kicking off school start time advisory committee, and I think several of the board members were able to attend that first meeting. And so we would anticipate this would be similar to the fact that board members could attend, and a little bit different than what we've done with the when we did the elementary boundaries. Our administrative staff, when we did elementary boundaries, the principals were part of the committee, and district staff were really there as resources. With the facility committee, the principals and district staff will be resources. So we'll kind of keep administration, for the most part, off the committees. But they're at the meetings to be able to answer questions and follow up on some of those things. So thank you. The last item on my list is the Superintendent Board of Education joint meeting. This is on April 1st. It's at CISA 11. I just want to make sure that you're aware of it. If you would like to go, please RSVP to Tim, so then he can RSVP and let us know. So if you can, you don't have to do it right this exact moment, but we'll probably keep hounding you for about another 2 weeks, and then after that, we're just going to kind of say whomever it is kind of the way we're going. So questions? All right, that's all I have.
All right, very good. So we move on to reports, and there are 4. First up, overnight travel. So is that, looks like you're going to, all right, very good.
All right. Thank you, first off, for your support with our location in the state. we have a little bit of overnight travel that's a necessity. So I appreciate your support in allowing our students to venture out and find competition within the state that meets the expectations we're trying to get our programs to. What I want to highlight in this document is we're reviewing the green, which is our spring travel, and then also there's a few orange down in the bottom, which would be our summer. So this was our December 1st deadline. Everything has been approved on here but one. We've taken a look at objectives. First being, is it something that we couldn't do in a closer location to eliminate that overnight travel? That's one question we discuss first. If there's something comparable nearby us, we try and do that. Some of our activities can go over to the Twin Cities. Some of our sports can go over to the Twin Cities, and it's a very feasible, if not a higher competition level there. Some of our activities cannot. Girls soccer, for example, their season is in the fall. So we try and do the best we can, but knowing that we do have some travel. I do want to highlight the one international trip we have coming up over spring break. The planning for that was started last December 1st, so that's our 1.5-year deadline. So that's been on there quite a while, and that works through high school administration to cabinet to school board. We do have a couple more on the other page. If we want to click on 2021. These will be highlighted at a later date, but they are placeholders on there as well, just so that we know that the work is being done far ahead of time to make sure that we're doing our job and getting them set up for success so that they can have a great experience. Our next deadline would be May 1st, and that's when we'll review our fall and winter travel. So right now we're going and accepting those proposals and doing the schedules. The windows have began to work really well in sequencing with our schedule, so I appreciate the ability to do the 2 dates in terms of our sports schedules. That's been really helpful. We are able to get those schedules set and work through those things and have everything organized at a point where we can present it to you as a finished product. We do not generally have to go back and add these overnight trips in a last second. So this is now that we have those 2 dates has been really helpful to help prevent us not having to do that, or help prevent us from having to do that. A couple things I want to highlight to finish, and then for questions. We understand overnight travel is not an ideal situation for high school. We try not to do it. We also try not to remove students from the classroom. So those are 2 focuses we continue to have. One thing a couple things that we're trying to do to help support that process, though, when we do have to do those things, is we've done an online application which has helped put all the information in one place, which then flows into our overnight travel tracker. And then the next thing we did was created a Google Calendar. On that Google Calendar, we have every piece of documentation from student lists, room assignments, itineraries. Everything's in one spot. That way, if we need to support that coach or advisor, we're able to. And also, I can look upcoming week and I know exactly who is going on a trip and when, where in the past it was you'd have to go find it or go through different avenues to be able to do that. So I think the support we've provided our coaches and advisors and parents who are making a lot of these trips as well possible, I think is a positive step in the right direction as well. So, any questions?
Any questions from board members? All right. It looks like actually for the spring and summer that less than half are athletic related, and there's a lot of academic related matters like the Science Olympiad and DECA and so forth.
Yep, and Science Olympiad's a new addition to the high school level. They've gone in the middle school, but now we've created as a school-sponsored club there, so they're doing a joint trip, which is great. And as far as the clubs and activities, a lot of their travel does happen in the spring. Most of their clubs are kind of convening with their season, and a lot of their state tournaments are in the spring as well. So we try and provide a balance. So with this sheet, what we can do as well is sort the left side. We've started to take a look at equity among the groups and make sure that it's not funneling into a few select programs. And if it is, we talk about why.
Thank you for your work on that, and I really appreciate administration's effort to, keep us advised on the board level, but at the same time, make this a feasible project so that it doesn't become unwieldy. Like you say, splitting it up into 2 reports is helpful. So, anything else from any of the other board members?
Mr. President?
Yes.
Just want to say thanks for all the work that you're doing and stepping up and hearing a lot of great things about all the activities. So appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Aaron. Next
Thank
up,
you for your support.
you bet. Next up is ELA update. Sandy's got that.
Sandy's
All
got
right.
that one. Tonight, the Teaching and Learning Report is an update on our middle school English Language Arts, or ELA, curriculum. Presenting this evening is Mary Beth Elliott, a secondary teaching and learning curriculum specialist and instructional coach. I think you were just here last month too, right? All right, next slide, Tim. As mentioned in previous presentations, the district curriculum improvement process is a 6-year process. Middle school ELA is currently in phase 5, focused on reflecting and revising. And I'll turn it over to Mary Beth.
Thanks. I'm super excited tonight to share, as opposed to some of the other nights where it was kind of the beginning stages of everything. This is the fun part, I think, for me for sure, and for teachers. So this slide is an example of our curriculum overview and the strands that we focus on in the English Language Arts program at the middle school and the high school. The foundation of the middle school program, when we went through the review process, we really wanted to focus on high volume of reading and writing, a variety of genres and writing types being included in student work and expectation, and then offering them a choice that builds a lot of buy-in at the middle school level. And then teachers are doing a lot of modeling and conferring during that time with students. At the middle school, we have 2 periods of language arts in 6th and 7th grade, and they're divided really between fiction and nonfiction, and each of the classes teach different standards. The language arts focus is fiction, narrative, and literary analysis in writing. And then the I3 focus is really informational text, and then informative and argumentative writing. Both classes, though, cover reading, nonfiction, fiction, summarizing, and inference. And with the I3 class, it allows us to kind of follow that true middle school model and be able to do some interdisciplinary. And what we found in the last 3 years with the implementation of that class is a lot of our core teachers, social studies, science, and other teachers are asking language arts teachers, those I3 teachers, for recommendations on how to do some reading strategies within their classroom. So that's been really awesome. And it allows us to expand kind of the reading and writing across the building and not just have it centered only in the language arts classroom. Here's an example of a writing class, and students are doing lots of high interest topics with lots of low pressure ungraded writing, and we really want to try to start small to get them writing and then move toward bigger, longer pieces to build that stamina in their writing. We use mentor text along with the teachers writing alongside of them and conferring. And the picture on the upper right, you can see this is one 6th grade classroom, same hour, the variety of how much kids can do in that time period. On the next page, I have some examples that you can go through. All those links are open to you, as well as what you're looking at right now. So what everyone has access to is a 6th grade quick write notebook. And the first thing you'll see in those quick write notebooks are their table of contents. That builds as the year goes on. The teacher identifies areas of instruction that the kids need, and then it's written in. So the pasted in pages are anchor charts that kids can refer back to, and the teacher will either provide them mentor text or model for them, and then the kids write. And I'm sure if you're reading some of those, it's quite fun and entertaining. And if you've gotten those at the end of the year for your own children, it's amazing to see the growth from the beginning to the end of the year. And these are ungraded. All of those are ungraded pieces. Every trimester, kids will pick 2 to 3 pieces and turn in for a grade, that they get the opportunity to rework them. This is an example of reading conferring, and the lower picture, the bottom one, I just want to point out the number of students that are sitting closely together in a middle school classroom on the couch is unheard of. And when I walked into that classroom, not one of them even looked up as I took the picture. They were all so intent on reading their book. And we're all at the middle school super excited at this time. Teachers are reading, they're conferring with students on their reading independently. So a teacher will see 2 to 3 kids in that first 10 minutes of class. Well, all the other kids are reading. So they'll check in and see where kids are at. This link is a video that shows Nicole Gunderson, one of our 6th grade teachers, with a student going through their reading conferring. And she talks to this student about notes that she's put in her notebook, and the student will refer to inferring and questioning, and then some other reading strategies that we use. She'll identify where she's at, where she thinks she is as a reader, what she's working on, and then she'll set a goal for what she wants to read to by the next time that they meet again. And it was at Christmas time, and it was Ugly Sweater Day. The teacher wanted to make sure that's not part of her normal clothing. Another part of reading is book clubs. And the group on the left was arguing about how many pages they should complete each day. And it was quite interesting for me to watch the collaboration between those 4 students, because they had decided they wanted to read 100 pages a day, and 100 pages a week, and one kid said, "That's too many. I think we should do 20." And there was like no talking between them to figure out and it wasn't a math class, so I didn't stop to correct anyone. I just let them keep going. They landed on the 20 pages a day, not the 100 pages a week. At all 3 grade levels, we have 4 different genres that are offered. Kids are offered choice. We make sure we have a really close balance between male and female characters, and it includes a lot of diversity. Kids are able to read, so what you see them doing is mapping out their plan of how much they'll read a day, when they'll meet, and then that's turned into the teacher. They set group norms for their group when they meet. And then you can see them kind of working on their own reading, and they'll take notes as they go through. These are examples of Membean screens, which is our vocabulary. It's an adaptable vocabulary software that we use. And on the far left is a picture of what it looks like on the kid's screen when it comes up. So every kid has a list that's at their correct level, so it's all adaptable. And then there's multiple ways for them to interact with that word. So there's a video, there's some examples and sentences. Lower on the screen, there's root words. And then when the kids are practicing those words, in the middle screen, they're asked to give an example of what profound is, and they pick one of those choices. But then there's other examples also where it's giving them other words that are connected, and they have to figure out what word is missing. So there's multiple ways for them to interact with their words. At the middle school, in the last 2 years, we've focused on increasing literacy across the curriculum and trying to build everybody's capacity to have that understanding of what it means to be a literate middle school student. So we created a rater literacy assessment that we do 5 times a year in 5 different core classes. And this is part of the test blueprint, and you can see the standard that's covered, and it reaches across it starts with the language arts standard, but it's also a science and technical standard, as well as history and social studies standard. And an example that a student might see on that test is which idea from the article best supports the main idea. So every time the student takes an assessment, they would read an article that's based on what's happening in that classroom at that time, and then they would answer questions like this one below. So I alluded to in the prior screen that this assessment is given 5 times throughout the year. Illuminate is a software program, data warehouse, that we use to track that information, so it happens in Illuminate. This is an example of last year's data, so it's the first column is the first rater literacy assessment. We see 5 different students here. Green or blue indicates a proficiency level. To be proficient at the middle school, we've identified that we like to see at least 2 greens or blues, or a final green or blue. So all 5 of these students would be considered proficient at the end of the year. But you can see, And I'm, reflecting and thinking back maybe on your own children, you can see maybe where there are some ups and downs, where that learning occurs and falls off over the course of the year. But getting to our end goal of everyone being proficient at the end of the year. And then this is an example of the overview from the beginning to the end of the year. So it's the same assessment with the same test blueprint, different articles, but the same types of questions. So this is one cohort, one class. At the beginning of the year, we're looking for green and blue to be proficient. So at the beginning of the year, this particular class, 0.5% of the students were proficient. By the end of the year, 68% of students were proficient. And we were super excited about seeing that. Illuminate also allows us to break down and look at skill level and allows teachers to really target specific students or small groups in their instruction.
Thank you. You can tell that ELA has changed from when many of us were in middle or junior high. A lot more student choice with the book clubs. The best way we know to improve reading and writing is to read and write. And so to have student interest in the books that they read independently is important, as well as the practicing of writing, that not everything they do is graded. We need lots of practice, and that's what you're seeing with the notebooks. So some really major changes going on, and we just thank Mary Beth with her leadership and all of the ELA teachers. They're just working very hard at making some very important changes. Jamie, questions?
Yeah, I had a question on the multiple assessment performance reports. You had said that there's 5 times where there's assessments throughout the year. Are the students given that information so that they can kind of chart how they're improving?
Yep. So they're given the information based on their house team. So every house kind of does it a little bit different. Some houses will have them go through and reflect on things that they missed and things that they got correct. And then other houses will just say, you're getting close to being proficient. Here's a few things you need to work on. So, yeah.
So they get feedback?
Yep.
Excellent. All right.
Always.
Anyone else on the board?
I was just going to say, I did read some of the student writing. I like Nana, where the boy's leaving Mars on a space craft and coming back to Earth because his grandma is not doing well. I love that one. But anyway, I love the idea that not everything is graded, and that probably relaxes and opens the doors. I mean, and I like the idea of their self-assessment being of value. I mean, in middle school, that's just an incredible new thought for me. So thank you for your work.
Thank you for your report. Now moving on to, we have the mental health board report, and Erin?
Yep. So the purpose of this report is to provide a general outline of mental health related services and programs that the district is currently implementing. As a district, it's important for us to be reflective of our current practices and look forward to what areas can improve and expand to meet the academic, social, and emotional needs of all of our students. So just a few highlights. Mental health services, similar to academic services, are delivered through a tiered system. So at the universal level for all students, the district has a comprehensive counseling service, which include developmental guidance lessons, positive behavior interventions and supports, and as well as career counseling. Advisory lessons are implemented at both the middle and high school level to explicitly teach social emotional skills and increase student connectedness to school. At the selected intensive supports and services, the district continues to provide access to co-located mental health therapy for students who have barriers to accessing outside therapy. So just last school year, during the 18-19 school year, these services were expanded to all district schools. Previously, they were only present in 5. Also, through our mental health grant, the district has implemented co-facilitated groups at all buildings and in all center-based special education programs. So these groups are led by licensed mental health therapists along with Hudson School District staff, kind of exist on a 6-week rotating basis, so that we can maximize the number of students and staff that we're connecting with through those. Professional development in the area of mental health is a really important and has helped increase staff knowledge and skills to help support students who may be experiencing issues related to mental health. The district has provided trauma-sensitive training to all district staff. By the end of the 1920 school year, we will have provided 4 youth mental health first aid trainings, so that we will have trained up to 120 staff members in that, with trainings planned for next school year as well. Community partnerships are vital in meeting the needs of Hudson's youth. We are very fortunate to live in a community in which support and collaboration happen on a regular basis, to provide community engagement events, parent seminars, and support for direct services for students. In the spirit of continuous improvement, the district is looking to the future to refine, improve, and expand mental health resources and services for both students and staff. One of the things that we're looking really closely at is our screening practices. Currently, the district implements a depression screener at 9th grade. We are exploring potential implementation of a more comprehensive screening practice that may include additional grade levels, as well as looking at a more global screener so that we're not just limited to depression. The Hudson Area Mental Health Council is working to host a community event around suicide awareness and prevention. We have a meeting scheduled this week. Steps are being taken to implement Signs of Suicide, SOS. It's a suicide prevention program for students during the 1920 school year. This would be implemented in addition to the suicide prevention lessons already in place through the health curriculum. We're fortunate to continue planning for additional community partners. A recent example of this is the Kindness and Courage retreats for 4th and 7th grade that are made possible through a collaboration with Luther Auto. So these retreats will add common experiences for 4th graders and 7th graders to complement our existing 9th grade Respect retreat. Questions?
All right, questions from board members? I guess I would start, some of those I recognize from when my kids were in school, like peer helpers and SAD. But this, the SMATH, spreading mental health awareness through Hudson. I know there's been some great efforts to try and reduce the stigma of discussing mental health. So can you tell me a little bit more about that one? That seems newer.
So that is one thing I didn't highlight when I was speaking, is that our student groups are really, really important in terms of our work around mental health. One of the biggest factors in providing support for kids is those peer-to-peer groups. We know through research that when kids are struggling, they're reaching out to other kids. And so the more that we can equip our students with information and skills, the better off we'll be. So SMATH is a newer group at the high school. We have a rep on our Mental Health Advisory Council, and so they've done some community awareness things, and they've done some advisory lessons as well.
Okay. Other board members have questions then?
Mr. President?
Yeah, Bruce.
I just want to make a comment more than anything. You know, having been on the board for 7 years now, this has continued to be an area of focus for our school. I think we've done a lot of great things here, and we continue to strive to be better all the time. So I do appreciate all the work that has been done and continues to be done. I know that certainly we've had a couple of challenging months here, but I think the effort that the school district puts behind this, the effort that the administration and staff put behind this is significant. And I do believe we're doing everything we can on our part at the district level to continue to make an impact there. And I think you're doing a lot of great things, and know that you'll continue to put work behind that. So thank you for what you're doing, and continue to build those relationships with outside parties as well as with the students. I think it can make a huge difference, so thank you.
Mr. President,
Bob?
I would echo what Bruce is saying. I heard some really good comments in the community, or from staff, about John Clem. That seminar was very well received, I heard. Staff was very positive about that, and of course, Dr. Babbitt has been well known by us. So I would encourage or hope that we can continue giving these quality seminars to our staff, and thank you.
Yep, thanks.
I just want to say, thank you again for your efforts, and knowing that this is not just something where we check the boxes and we're constantly looking for ways to improve. But I just think what I was impressed with was your report, the way that you had it organized, and you showed how it's being approached from universal level, staff professional development, the student groups, but also community partnerships. So a lot has changed over that 7 years Bruce and I have been on the board, and I think that that's just a testament to our constant striving to improve in this area. It's just, it's such a big issue. We got more kids undergoing anxiety and stress and so forth, and there is so much we can do at this level, but it does take a whole community, and that's why those community partnerships and everything, I think, really important, and I'm glad that we're bringing in the outside speakers, developing our staff, and encouraging our students. So I think you're looking at it from all the different angles that we need to be, and keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Yes,
Mr.
Sue?
President, I'll just echo, Jamie, I think that you've really, have really moved this program along, and I like the way you're encircling the topic, sort of, I don't know if 360 is the right word, but it's like there's multiple approaches, and I also really like the ideas, what Bob said in terms of supporting staff and looking at anxiety and depression and so on, and I'm familiar with Dr. Babbitt's work. And so, I mean, they're going to be sometimes the first adults that kids maybe will feel comfortable talking with, and I just think it looks really good, so hats off to you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? All right, moving on then to the fourth of the reports, and that is the School Start Time Advisory Committee, which started last week and was attended by 4 of us board members. But Dave, are you giving the report on this?
Yes, I will
Okay.
gladly do that. Yep, so as you said, Tuesday, February 4th, we kicked off the School Start Time Advisory Committee. Very successful evening, well attended. We had 62 members in attendance, plus some board members, and highly engaged. Sometimes when you start a process like this, especially with a large group, it takes a while to get everyone warmed up and comfortable with one another and engaged. That was not the case. People were engaged right away. It was fantastic. It was very energizing. And to gather that many people in a room that care that much, that are willing to give that time, dedicate their energy and their talents, that is pretty impressive. So it was a very, very good night. I want to especially give a shout out to the students, our middle school and high school students. That can be a pretty intimidating situation. You walk in with all those adults and all that expertise, and right away engaged and offered their own perspectives and insight, so it was fantastic. There's a presentation here. We're not going to go through the presentation. You can go back and take a look if you weren't at the presentation. Those are just the slides that we went through, but I want to just give a quick highlight, walk you through what we accomplished, and then a short look at what our next steps will be. So we started talking about norms, and those are the ways we want to behave and treat one another in the meeting, and that was a very lively conversation with a lot of great ideas, and went right into what I think is one of the most challenging aspects of this sort of thing. It's the decision-making process. How do we go about, as a large group, making decisions, and ultimately, what's the scope of those decisions that we are allowed to make? Had a lively conversation that actually wasn't completely resolved. We'll have to go back to about determining the criteria for vetting research, which, as you know, there's a lot out there, so we need to figure that out. And then we went into the study phases. Now, the study phases, I guess you can fast forward, Tim, to that one so we can see the study phases. This is an important part. I describe the study phases as sort of an accordion. And when Aaron and Tracy and I talk about how are we going to make sure that everyone is heard, really, that's the most important thing. At the end of the day, we want to leave that process knowing that everyone feels their voice was heard. So we use this accordion process where we reach out, we gather information, then we come back in, we discuss. We'll go out back to the community, we'll bring it back into a small group and discuss, and continue to do that until we feel that we have all the information. There will be a few opportunities for community input on a large scale, probably something at the auditorium that will open it up to the community at large so people can voice their opinions, concerns, and ask questions of the committee. We engage in a very engaging activity around things that people are noticing. So we gave them information about the district compared to other districts and just asked them, what are you noticing and what do you wonder? We gathered all that information along with the feedback that they offered on the other topics. We'll be posting that on the website. If you go to hudsonraiders.org, there's a tab for the School Start Time Advisory Committee, similar to what we've done in previous advisory committees. All that information will be posted so people can keep up with the process that we're going through. Our next meeting will be on Thursday, March 12th. Topic will be adolescent sleep research. Again, it'll be 6:30 to 8 o'clock about, and also held at the high school in the large group instruction space. Questions?
Mr. President?
Yes, Bruce.
How did you feel the cross-section was of people maybe for early start times and those against early start times? Or is it too tough to really understand where people are at? Hopefully everybody was just in a fact-gathering mindset?
Even though people went, obviously they have a level of interest. So they could have some preconceived notions or ideas or a general path that didn't come out in the meeting. People were very open to listening and learning. When you're talking about something as big as this, I think the people that are motivated to be involved likely are very interested in looking at options. So it may appear that we have a group that is more interested in change, but having said that, they were still very interested in all of the reasons why this is very complex and requires a large conversation.
Great, thank you.
I look forward to attending a few more of those meetings and see. Thought you guys did an excellent job in organizing it, and very good job in not making it very clear. No one's being led to a particular conclusion. People were allowed to have their comments, and they even disagreed with needing to come to an idea of what the word consensus. So you couldn't get consensus
on the concept of consensus, right?
On what the word consensus means. But so while you may have your work cut out for you there, I think that opening up and trying to gather as much information, is a really good starting point. And I like your accordion process of coming back and getting the community, because it's a two-way level of communication. Not only is the committee gathering information from research and so forth, but they also need to get that out so that we see what they're reviewing. And when I say we, it's us in the general community see that. I think it's very interesting that on these school start times, and it said what comparable or area schools are doing, and of the roughly 8 or 9 that have done research, it's split kind of 50-50 as to whether or not they went to a start time after 8 a.m. or kept a start time before 8 a.m.
Yeah,
So
I think that points to the complexity of the circumstances.
Right.
There's a lot to it.
Yep. All right. Gary?
Sorry, I just found where it's got the homework that you gave to the committee last time. Will that be at every meeting that there's like a read that they're supposed to be doing?
Likely there will be. That was actually something that came out from a suggestion from one of the committee members, but likely we would be doing that just because there's so much, and we're not going to be able to dedicate a lot of time to sitting down and reading articles for the hour and a half. So likely there would be homework.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, that article wasn't necessarily light reading, but
No.
still something that spurs further questions, I'm sure.
Right.
Mr. President,
Bob?
I'd just like to note that obviously a wide group or ranging some with an education, some with sleep study experience, some with child psychology experience. It was very interesting to see that group work together in that meeting. I think they were ready to, hit the ground running, and we're kind of ready to go. But I also was very impressed that they seemed to understand that part of their main charge is also communicating to the community as well. And so that's, I think, going to be critical for this.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and that whole idea of smaller groups within a larger group is really critical to get, good work done. It's really hard to do it when you have all 62 people, trying to talk at once, but to be able to have that small group, I think that's going to help get some great input. All right, anything else? Thank you for those reports. We'll move on to action items, and I would open the floor to a motion for the consent agenda with the terminology as stated.
Move for the approval of the consent items and that the Chief Financial and Operations Officer be authorized to pay bills in the amount of $2,567,991.52.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda items and the expenditures as stated on the screen. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Do we have some recognition or some?
We do have one retirement.
Okay.
She's been with us 10 years, so not eligible for the retirement benefits as they're laid out in the handbook, but still considered a retirement all the same, and so we'll be celebrating her as well. Kim Pavlicek, she's a language arts teacher at the middle school, so she gave us notice last week that she will be retiring at the end of this year.
All right, we appreciate her service. Then moving on, next up is, first item for action would be the first reading of Policy 411 as well as Rule 411. Student non-discrimination. This is a new policy, and it's something that we dealt with in the last work session regarding its origins and so forth. But Andrea, do you want to give us a summary or?
Sure, Erin and I can tag team on this one since we worked on it together. So one of the goals with this policy, as we're reviewing, we're commencing with the student policies, the student section, the 400 series. A goal has always been throughout our policy analysis to increase transparency, to update certainly as appropriate, because this is one of those policies that hadn't been updated for a very long time, and there's been a lot of changes in the last 20 years. So that was an essential element of consideration. But really, again, we look at how can it be clear to people reading the policy of where they are to go for any particular situation. And clarity, transparency, and just making sure that the rules are known. And I think that this revision in this policy, and then we did include the deletions of three, one policy, two rules at the end of this document as well, to show you what was in its place or what's current language, and then again what we're proposing here. I think these new policies are much more appropriate in 2020, and I also think that they provide a roadmap for students in this particular area. And as we mentioned at the work session, our next steps will be to deal with harassment and then to also reflect on the bullying policy as well, so that we hit those, I call it with staff, the big three, and I think it's similar with students as well. And so we're working collaboratively in improving these.
All right. So any questions from board members on this? I appreciate the fact you put the previous policy, at least one that would be the closest to, because
Yes.
it wasn't phrased in terms of anti-discrimination. It was more of an equal educational opportunities, which has, been revised around the edges kind of over the course of, appears to be almost 30 years. But this is more of just an overall, overhaul word.
A significant overhaul. And then based on your feedback from the last work session too, it was a really good point about we had he/she. And so we have updated it with the most recent draft to he, she, they throughout to be consistent. So again, looking to be equitable throughout the policy.
All right. Any other questions? Again, just pointing out that one is a policy and then there's a corresponding rule which sets forth a whole complaint procedure.
Mr. President, I sent 2 questions to Andrea, and Aaron, and now she's answered them for me, so I don't have to ask him again. But I was curious to know, like forms that, I know what this is going to get to the handbook, which is a whole nother thing, but when you get to forms and so on, will they also be more reflective of Heather's point and this policy that's expanded on protective classes and so on?
And I think Aaron's department will be certainly in charge of those forms, but I would assume that they'd be consistent in
Yeah,
that.
those are things that we would review and try to create consistency across all of our policies and handbooks and things like that.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other question? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the first reading.
Mr. President, I would move approval of the first reading of Policy 411 and Rule 411 as presented.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? The motion passes. Next up, we have our petitions to transfer property. And you already heard from Mr. Frawley, and so let's take the Frawley.
You know, I don't think there's a whole lot of discussion on this. Again, both of these are petitions to accept property into the district. Administration recommendation on both of these would be to accept both petitions.
Move to approve both petitions be accepted into the Hudson School District.
All right. Been a motion and a second.
You could take two separate actions, one on each property.
Yep.
Is that what the preference is?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
So the Frawley.
Friendly amendment then, to just do a Frawley?
Friendly amendment.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to approve the Frawley petition. Mr. Frawley spoke earlier. Any further questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Next up is the Steiger. I wanted to make sure I didn't mispronounce it there, but
Move to approve the Steiger property into the Hudson School District.
Second. Oh, Bob, take it.
all right, we have a motion, a second. Again, it's same school district, Somerset, to Hudson, and for all the reasons that people are familiar with how that school district line goes in a zigzag manner. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion passes. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, we are adjourned.